May 3rd, 2023, 0243 Moscow time. Security cameras positioned around the Kremlin captured unusual activity. Two small objects approached from different angles. Explosions occurred directly above the Senate Palace dome, the building housing the presidential office. Flames briefly visible, debris falling. Within minutes, Russian officials declared a Ukrainian drone assassination attempt against President Putin. Ukrainian officials denied involvement, suggesting Russian false flag operation. Multiple cameras recorded the incident from various positions across Moscow. The footage spread globally within hours. This is what verified evidence shows us. The Kremlin, a fortified complex in central Moscow, represents the symbolic and administrative heart of Russian state power. Its location, roughly 700 kilometers from Ukrainian-controlled territory, placed it well beyond range of most Ukrainian drone systems known at that time. Russian air defense networks around Moscow included multiple overlapping systems designed to protect exactly such critical infrastructure. S-400 batteries, short-range point defense systems, and electronic warfare capabilities formed defensive rings. That drones reached the Kremlin raised immediate questions about those defenses. Video analysis by open-source intelligence specialists geo-referenced the footage. Multiple angles showed two distinct detonations above the green dome of the Senate Palace. Timestamps across different cameras corresponded within seconds, confirming simultaneity. The size of explosions appeared relatively small, consistent with commercial or light military drones carrying limited payloads. Damage to the structure appeared minimal from available imagery. No fires sustained beyond the initial flash. No structural collapse. Russian authorities immediately characterized this as attempted political assassination. Official statements condemned Ukraine and promised retaliation. State media coverage emphasized the attack on Russian sovereignty and leadership. The incident occurred just days before Victory Day celebrations on May 9th, Russia's most significant military commemoration. Ukrainian officials categorically denied involvement. Presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak stated Ukraine fights Russia on Ukrainian territory and has no interest in targeting Putin or Moscow. Other Ukrainian officials suggested Russia staged the incident to justify escalation or cancel Victory Day events, though the parade proceeded as scheduled. Western intelligence sources, speaking anonymously to media, expressed skepticism about several aspects of both narratives. If Ukraine possessed drones capable of reaching Moscow, why use them in such apparently ineffective manner? If Russia staged this, why risk looking vulnerable? The situation resisted simple explanation. Which tactical scenario makes most sense? Ukrainian long-range operation, Russian false flag, or third-party provocation? Analyzing available evidence requires examining capabilities, motivations, and documented facts separately. From a capabilities perspective, Ukrainian forces had demonstrated increasing drone range throughout the conflict. Documented strikes against Russian airfields in Engels and Dyagilevo, hundreds of kilometers inside Russia, showed operational reach. However, those targets sat closer to Ukrainian territory than Moscow. Commercial drones modified for military purposes could theoretically achieve such ranges with favorable conditions, though payload capacity decreases with distance. Intelligence preparation would require precise Kremlin location data, easily obtained from public sources, in planning for Moscow's defensive systems. The motivation question cuts deeper. If Ukraine conducted this operation, what strategic objective justified the risk? Assassination attempts against Putin would trigger massive retaliation and potentially unite Russian public opinion. The drones carried insufficient explosive payload for effective assassination, even if they had struck precisely. The symbolic value of hitting the Kremlin might boost Ukrainian morale, but at enormous cost. Tactical military value appeared minimal. Alternatively, if Russia orchestrated this as false flag operation, several motivations emerge, justifying escalation against Ukrainian leadership or infrastructure. Rallying domestic support, creating pretexts for canceling or modifying Victory Day events if security concerns existed. Testing Moscow's air defense reactions. Each theory carries logical weight but also complications. Have you seen the verified footage from multiple camera angles? Check the sources linked in description. The documented defensive response tells its own story. Russian air defense systems around Moscow did not appear to engage these drones before impact. No visible missile launches. No reports of electronic warfare disruption. Either the drones evaded detection until too late for interception, or defensive systems chose not to engage for unknown reasons. Both possibilities raise significant questions about Russian capital defense. Following the incident, Russian officials announced enhanced security measures for Victory Day. Additional air defense systems deployed to Moscow. Electronic warfare assets positioned around the city. Fighter aircraft maintained combat air patrols. These measures suggested genuine concern about aerial threats, whether foreign or domestic. The Victory Day parade on May 9th proceeded with full ceremony. President Putin attended and delivered his annual address. No incidents occurred. The elaborate defensive preparations worked, or no further attempts were made. International reaction varied. Western governments largely avoided direct attribution. NATO officials noted the incident but offered no definitive assessment of responsibility. Some Eastern European nations suggested Russian provocation. Media coverage reflected this uncertainty, with analyses presenting multiple scenarios without conclusive determination. Does this pattern indicate escalation in unconventional operations or information warfare? The incident fits uncomfortably into both categories. If genuine Ukrainian operation, it represents dramatic expansion of drone warfare into political targeting. If Russian false flag, it demonstrates sophisticated information operation. If neither, some third explanation remains undiscovered. Comment your analysis. From a technical standpoint, the drones themselves offer clues. Video analysis suggests relatively small, fixed-wing or multi-rotor platforms. Flight characteristics visible in footage indicate speeds and maneuverability consistent with commercial drone modifications. Explosive payloads appeared limited, creating fireballs but minimal structural damage. Russian authorities displayed drone wreckage claimed to be from the incident, though independent verification of these specific components proved impossible. The timing deserves examination. May 3rd, 5 days before Victory Day. Attacking just before Russia's most important patriotic celebration carries obvious symbolic weight. For Ukraine, demonstrating reach into Moscow before major celebration could embarrass Russian leadership. For Russia, staging false flag, creating pretext to heighten security or modify celebrations, might serve internal political purposes. The propaganda value exceeded any military impact. Russian state media extensively covered the incident, framing it as Ukrainian terrorism against Russian leadership. Ukrainian responses emphasizing denial and suggesting Russian manipulation received less attention in Russian information space. Western media coverage analyzed the incident from multiple angles, generally acknowledging uncertainty about true perpetrators. The information warfare dimensions possibly mattered more than physical effects. Strategic analysts noted several broader implications regardless of attribution. First, Moscow's vulnerability to small drone threats became demonstrated fact. Whether the drones originated from Ukraine, Russian territory, or elsewhere, they reached the Kremlin. Second, defensive systems protecting Russian capital showed gaps or limitations. Third, the incident occurred amid ongoing drone strikes against Russian military infrastructure, suggesting escalating unmanned aerial vehicle warfare. If you follow verified military analysis, type verified. The retaliatory strikes Russian officials promised materialized in documented increased attacks against Ukrainian cities. Whether these represented genuine retaliation or would have occurred regardless cannot be definitively established. Russian missile and drone strikes against Kiev and other cities intensified in the days following May 3rd. Ukrainian authorities documented these attacks through official channels. The correlation was clear, causation less certain. Security implications extended beyond immediate aftermath. Russian authorities implemented enhanced drone detection systems around Moscow. Commercial drone flights faced new restrictions. Air defense posture around the capital increased permanently. These adaptations impose costs and resource requirements. Forces and equipment dedicated to Moscow defense were unavailable for deployment to combat zones. The asymmetric nature of drone threats creates defensive challenges. Small, relatively inexpensive drones can penetrate areas larger. Conventional aircraft cannot. Their radar signatures may be minimal. Flight profiles can exploit defensive gaps. Countermeasures exist but require extensive deployment and constant vigilance. The cost-exchange ratio favors attackers, a fundamental problem for defenders. Investigation claims from Russian authorities suggested they identified perpetrators and methods. However, no detailed evidence was publicly released beyond general statements. Ukrainian involvement was asserted but not proven through verifiable means. The information environment surrounding the incident remained contested. What tactical adaptations should we watch for next? Share your thoughts. The Kremlin incident entered the historical record alongside other mysterious provocations where attribution remains disputed. The fog of war extends into the information domain. Competing narratives, limited evidence, and political motivations on all sides complicate analysis. What we can document with certainty: 2 drones struck the Kremlin on May 3, 2023. Video footage from multiple angles confirms this. Beyond that established fact, interpretation requires acknowledging uncertainty. The strategic conversation this incident generated possibly mattered more than the attack itself. Questions about Ukrainian capabilities, Russian defenses, escalation thresholds, and information warfare all gained prominence. The physical damage was minimal. The psychological and analytical impact proved substantial. Months later, no conclusive independent investigation results were published. Russian authorities maintained their Ukrainian attribution. Ukrainian officials sustained their denial. Western intelligence agencies offered no public definitive assessment. The incident remained a data point of uncertain origin, but documented occurrence. For military analysts, the takeaway centers on demonstrated vulnerabilities and expanding conflict dimensions. Drone warfare reached symbolic political targets, whether through hostile action or false flag operations. Moscow's defensive systems faced new challenge categories. The information space became as contested as physical battle space. Future operations would need to account for these realities. This analysis is based on available open-source information and official statements as of May 2023. Attribution remains disputed between Russian and Ukrainian versions. Technical details about the drones, exact damage assessment, and investigation findings were not fully disclosed. Skyfall warfare aims to provide fact-based analysis while acknowledging the fog of war in information operations. The documented impact extends across multiple domains. Moscow's vulnerability to small drone threats became established. Air defense gaps or failures were demonstrated. Information warfare narratives competed for credibility. Retaliatory actions followed, whether causally linked or coincidentally timed. Defensive adaptations impose new costs and resource allocations. What does verified evidence tell us? 2 drones struck the Kremlin, captured on multiple cameras, with limited physical damage but significant symbolic impact. How have operations evolved based on documented incidents? Both sides increased focus on drone capabilities and urban air defense systems. What patterns indicate future activity? Continued drone operations against symbolic and strategic targets, expanded defensive measures, and ongoing information warfare surrounding such incidents. Real warfare, real analysis, Skyfall warfare. Subscribe to Skyfall Warfare for documented analysis of real aerial warfare and information operations. Sources in description.